Hello and welcome to Tigers Talk Ethics, a show that brings to life an ethical and moral debate. My name is Daniel Lance and thank you so much for joining us. We film the opinions of people around campus here at Clemson University. This week, our topic of discussion is contraception. We asked students to share how they felt about sexual education, contraceptives, and even the role of government. These are real opinions by real students. Let's talk some ethics.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Breeden. In September 2012, a court in the state of Illinois affirmed that pharmacists do not have to dispense the morning after pill. For example, if a pharmacist has religious or moral objections, they are not required to dispense these emergency contraceptives. We asked students around campus if they thought pharmacists should be able to dispense the morning after pill at their own discretion. Let's hear what they have to say.
No, I do not think that they should be able to dispense the morning after pill or contraception at their own discretion, mostly because, well, this is a free market and you should probably make more money anyway, but I feel like that's up to the consumer and not really the vendor.
No, I don't think they should. I think as a consumer I have a right to go into the store and buy whatever's offered there without the store owner being able to say yes or no just based on their religious beliefs.
I don't think that it should be up to the pharmacist to decide whether the consumer can buy the pill or not. It should be left up to the consumer. It's their lifestyle, it's their way of believing. That's what they want to do.
I think it's okay if a pharmacist would rather not dispense a morning after pill because then they might feel personally responsible for the killing of an unborn child. As long as the female who's trying to get the morning after pill would be able to find it somewhere, I think that's okay for them to be able to have their own discretion. Because I know personally, if I was a pharmacist and I'm Catholic, if I had to hand out those pills and I was like forced to do that, I would very much dislike that and feel like I was being held against my morals. But so yeah, I think pharmacists should have their own discretion with that.
Yes, I do believe they should be able to deny it because based on like your religious rights and what you pursue and support, if you don't support that way of life or action, you shouldn't be able, to dispute it. But if you're a national company, it should be based on your company's belief, not yours, because you are working for that company. But therefore, any decision, it should be, respectful and responsible based on the person's current situation. So.
Those are some really interesting interviews.
I agree. One thing I still can't get over, though, is the fact that the pharmacists in Illinois could just give out these contraceptives at their own discretion,
Right, it's really interesting, and I think we saw a lot of the opinions from these students. We were able to easily see both sides.
Right, on the one hand, you have the pharmacist who, the question that can be raised is, does he have to give this out, And then you have the consumer, which is saying, hey, this is a free market, if your product's going to be out there, then I need to be able to buy it. And there shouldn't be any stipulations to it.
Right, and I think we really saw Kim, Charles, and Ellen saying that they were very much for the consumer. This is a free market. You have stuff out there, and I want to get it.
Right, that one extreme.
Definitely.
And then but then on the other hand, you have to admit that you have Jeremy, who is kind of riding the fence a little bit.
Right, he wants to protect the pharmacists. He believes in their rights, but then he says, well, hey, you choose who you work for. You know what their beliefs are, what their morals are when you go to work for them, so you know what you're getting yourself into. Right,
and I think if I was the pharmacist, if I was put in that situation, I think that I would have to realize that, I signed up for this. I went to this school and realized that my duty as a pharmacist is to give this stuff out.
Definitely, and as a consumer, I want to be able to go and get what is available to me.
Absolutely. Now, one thing, though, that I think plays a huge role is what Alyssa said about bringing her religion into it.
Definitely.
She was talking about her being Catholic, and so what she says is she goes in saying, these pharmacists should be allowed to turn people away. But then even she rides the fence a little bit, and she goes to the other extreme, saying, well, these consumers, they have to be able to buy it somewhere else, and if they can, then I totally agree with that.
Right, I definitely agree, and I think religion is such a gray area, and it brings a lot in to consider. I consider it when I'm making these kind of choices, but it's such a huge topic, especially with contraception and everything. And so I think it's something to consider as we move along and watch these other interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Hi, I'm Olivia Ellswick. The two most common types of sexual education in high school are abstinence-only and comprehensive sex ed. Abstinence-only sexual education encourages abstinence until marriage and avoids material about contraceptives. Comprehensive sex education expands on topics such as pregnancy, contraceptives, and STIs. In 2007, a congressional report found that students who participated in abstinence-only education had sex at the same age and showed similar rates of pregnancy and STIs as students who had comprehensive sex education. And in 2012, President Obama set aside $5 million for abstinence-only education programs in high schools. We asked students whether or not they thought sex ed in high school should be abstinence-only. Let's hear what they have to say.
I think that in high school, sex ed should be, just to be protected and, just to be careful about sex, because I believe that it's really hard to prevent sex in the first place. So the fact that you're telling them not to have sex would just probably make them want to have it even more. So I feel that sex ed should just be to have safe, protected sex, and just be careful.
No, I don't think it should be. Sex is something that's natural that you get into right around the time of high school. I think you should teach safe sex because kids are going to do it whether you only teach abstinence or not, so you might as well teach them to do it the right way.
I don't think that high school sex education programs should be abstinence only because so many high schoolers are going to have sex anyways. It doesn't matter what the school is going to tell them, so they might as well try and make it safe.
I think high school sex education should be more abstinence only, because with the safe sex route, then that still makes it sound like it's acceptable to be what's the word? Well, I don't know. To just do whatever you want all the time, and that's not okay. I don't think so. So I think the abstinence only route is good because it'll have a more of an influence to stay safe and to, I don't know. Personally, for me, my high school sex education was abstinence only, and I feel like it was a good program. And they also taught about the diseases and everything else that can come along, all the risks that come along with being promiscuous. That's what I was trying to think of. But yeah, so the safe sex route, I think it allows you to feel that it's okay to be promiscuous as long as you're safe about it, but I don't feel like that's what any high school student should be concerned with or should be using as a use of their time. So yeah, I would say the abstinence only is a better route.
I believe high school programs should not be abstinence only because in regards to sex, it's all over the place. It's everywhere. And as Americans, they have the saying ugly Americans because we have this double standard on sex because we think as it's bad, it's negative, yet it's all over our media, it's everywhere. So, kids in high school are going to, interact with sexual things all the time. So you might as well just don't say no sex because they're going to go out and explore anyway, and our minds want to explore. So I believe they should just give, strong, development programs to say, hey, this is out here, this STD is out here, you can get pregnant. These are the rates and the statistics behind teen pregnancy. You don't want to go there, but they should just be truthful with them. If they are having sex, just tell them be safe as possible because you really can't stop the high school outside of high school.
One thing I noticed is that one person agreed that abstinence should be taught in high schools.
Yeah, it was a little more one-sided than we've seen before, with more people thinking that it should be comprehensive sex education. And it was pretty interesting how Kim, Charles, and Ellen all agreed that kids are going to have sex regardless of whether it's comprehensive or abstinence only, so we might as well know the basics of being safe. And that kind of went along with Congress's findings in 2007 that regardless of which method is taught, that we're going to have the same rates of STIs and pregnancy as before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one thing that I think it was 2012, right, that you're talking about, yeah, that Obama dropped $5 million for abstinence-only programs, which in a sense leads right into Jeremy's point, because Jeremy talks about if it's abstinence-only, you get taught all this information about don't have sex, you should not do it, and then you go right to the media, and you look on TV and you see all this information about how sex is popular, and it's almost like the thing to do in high school.
It's definitely a double standard that high school students are faced with of which which way is the better way.
Right.
And Alyssa was brought up in her high school with abstinence only, and which kind of Jeremy thought wasn't such a great idea, since with culture we're taught that that's not the best method. But she believes that safe sex is not having sex, and that's the best way for your health, whereas Kim and Charles and Ellen more saw it as taking preventative measures, using contraceptives, and just being safe in general.
It's like the idea of being careful. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then I know in my high school we were abstinence only, you know, and I did agree with that. I thought it was, you know, very well. I guess it kind of created a new, like a good environment for kids to be like, oh, I should stay abstinent, and this is just the way it is. And if you can create that environment long enough, when you get into the real world, you're not going to be affected by the social media.
In my high school, not a word was ever spoken about sex education. It wasn't even offered.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we should move on to the next question. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Good. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 4 out of 5 pregnancies before age 19 are unplanned. Since 2011, a number of high schools in the New York City area have adopted a new program that gives high school students access to emergency contraceptives, also known as the morning after pill. The program also offers birth control pills, pregnancy testing, and even condoms. Although it is too early to tell just how much of an effect this program will have in reducing the number of unplanned teen pregnancies, there are concerns that increased availability of contraceptives will lead to a higher rate of sexual activity. We asked students whether or not they believe that contraceptives should be offered in high school. Let's see what they have to say.
I think contraception should be available in high schools, but not free of charge, mostly because you would have to buy them anyway in the real world. So to get them for free, well, I guess it's a good thing, but at the same time, you know, that's up to your own discretion. So, but I think they should offer it either way.
I don't think they necessarily have to. I think it's a great idea, and it's great for them to do it, but I don't think it should be mandatory, something that the school needs to spend money on, though. If they have extra money, I think that's a great thing to do.
I do believe that high schools should offer contraception to their students to prevent pregnancies, prevent STDs, and it's going to happen anyways. However, I don't think it should be built into part of the school funding, and it shouldn't come out of their school funds.
I do not personally think that high school should offer contraceptives, because that, to me, seems misleading that they're saying it's okay for their students to be promiscuous, because we'll still allow for you to have a backup plan if something were to go wrong. And I don't think that's something a high school should be involved with. That's something for the doctor, the hospital to take care of, not for your educational institute to be offering.
I believe high school should offer contraception, because based on my last question, I mean, we're teaching them to have safe sex and be aware of what's out there. So, I mean, if they were to encounter sexual relations, we want them to be prepared for anything that's out there. So, all contraceptives should be allowed in high schools and should be dispersed free of charge. And I believe it's a pretty good program.
Well, great. It's good to hear some of those opinions. They were about on point. About what I expected from some of my fellow students.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an interesting thing to note, though, is that half these kids that we interviewed were straight out of high school.
Yeah, actually, Kim, the first interviewee, said that she'd be all right with contraception being sold at a school, as long as, I think she said, as long as the students paid for it.
Yeah, she was very pro-student, like being able to buy them. Just because she said that if you're going to buy them anyways from a store, why not buy them from the school?
There you go. Charles, on the other hand, either didn't seem to care whether or not they were sold. Maybe we could look into that, and maybe he doesn't want them to be sold at all. Maybe he doesn't think it's necessary.
Yeah, he used the word mandatory, which I think is a very good word. He says, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I would say no, but if it were to happen, it should not be mandatory.
Well, I think the whole reason a high school would offer contraception in any way, shape, or form, be it condoms, birth control, even the morning after pill. The main point of that is obviously to reduce unintended pregnancies.
Right.
And it's hard to see how a high school offering these sorts of contraceptives, how that could hurt any.
That is true, but you have to look at it from the other viewpoint, that if you're going to offer those things, you're basically promoting them to have sex.
And that's what some scientists and Alyssa, that's what she said too.
Right.
Sort of like giving it a pass, like saying, you know what, sex is going to be okay because we're giving you tools to prevent pregnancy and STDs, right. So just go for it.
Right, and even if it's, like she said something along the lines of, if it's going to happen anyways, you might as well start helping in any way you can.
Yeah, it's better than not offering it or having
Absolutely.
your kids, your students, go steal the condoms from Walmart down the
Walmart,
road.
yep, exactly.
Which is not a very ethical thing to do either.
No, that is definitely not ethical.
All right, well, let's move on to the next question.
All right, let's do it.
Planned Parenthood. You might have heard about this nonprofit organization in the news. They tend to come up in conversations about abortion and money. So how are these two things related? Well, Planned Parenthood, according to their website, is the nation's leading sexual and reproductive health care provider and advocate. They give consultations to both women and men for matters regarding sexual health. This includes preventing unintended pregnancies, testing for STIs, and giving breast exams. This organization, since 1970, has received funding from the federal government. They receive approximately 1/3 of their money from the government in the form of grants and contracts. According to NPR News, Planned Parenthood received $390 million in 2009. Considering the turbulent economic times we're facing in the United States, we asked students whether or not they thought the government should continue to fund this program. Let's check out their opinions.
I think that, sure, it's a good thing that we have Planned Parenthood, but I don't really think that we should be providing money for it. I think that if you've got yourself in a mess, that you should probably deal with it yourself in the first place. So that's just how I feel about that.
I don't think they should. It's a good idea, but I think that's on people to go out and get that kind of stuff themselves. The government shouldn't have to spend money on something like that that's for people's personal use, whether they want to or not, basically, like during these bad economic times.
I think that the government should continue to allocate money for Planned Parenthood, but I don't think they should be giving as much, especially in hard economic times that we're in. It's a good program, and it gives resources that many people need and might not otherwise be able to get.
I don't think the U.S. government needs to allocate money towards Planned Parenthood, because my understanding of it is Planned Parenthood offers counseling to people who have gotten themselves pregnant or, having a family or whatever. And I don't feel like the government offers other types of counseling. And so I don't feel like government money should go towards this specific type of counseling. And then it also saves people who are possibly thinking about ways of birth control or an abortion to save money by not having to spend it on this counseling, and then they might could use that money towards having an abortion. And I don't feel like it's the government's role to provide this type of counseling to people. And I don't think that's how tax dollars should really be used. There's a lot of other things that we have going on in our country that need to be looked at before we go on to try to provide counseling like that.
With the government allocating money to Planned Parenthood, my answer is based on the stats before. Is that money being used to good use? So if the programs they're using and the things that are given out to our society, if it's working, continue to do it. Other than that, it needs to probably cut down on the spending, to help out with the deficit and everything. But it's a good program, but they may, as an industrial engineer, they could be working more efficient, because that is a high number in 2009.
When it comes to Planned Parenthood, people seem to think that they should receive either less federal funding or no more federal funding. Kim and Charles both said that Planned Parenthood should not receive any more federal funding, and they think the services that they provide should come out of pocket, or at least it should come from somewhere other than the federal government. On the other hand, we have Ellen and Jeremy. They thought that Planned Parenthood should just receive less money. They drew on the fact that we've come across some rough economic times, especially over the past half decade or so. Alyssa was sort of, in the middle of these two camps. She said that if there is a program that could benefit more from the money, she would probably like to see it go to that. Regarding contraception as a whole, we see people's political and religious ideologies come into play. And as we've seen, making an informed decision is not necessarily an easy one. The best thing you can do is to keep thinking about it. This has been Tiger Stock Ethics. Thank you for joining us.